today, Lisamarie?
Good morning, Stephanie. Great to see you.
Good afternoon. Remember, I'm on the Eastern time zone as you're on the West. That's what I love about this, how we have been able to collaborate for so long, learning from each other on opposite sides of the United States. It's awesome.
It is good.
Everybody, welcome back for the second CRE Power Hour, where our goal is to just simply have conversations with other people in commercial real estate, share knowledge. Lisamarie and I both built our businesses on collaborating with other people around this country in the same industry. And I want to turn it over to you, Lisamarie, because we have an amazing person on today that you've gotten to know over the course of several years, right?
Yes, I'm so excited today to introduce our special guest, Bernadette Hurley. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Bernadette began her real estate journey in 1998, where she wore lots of different hats, like Stephanie and I both have along her journey. She began as a residential agent, later building her team to produce over 200 units annually. And then she moved to the management and leadership side of the business, where she was president of Keller Williams Raleigh and opened up the Keller Williams Wake Forest location. She grew her KW Raleigh commercial to be the largest commercial brokerage within the KW organization in 2019. And since then, she's pivoted again to become a career coach for residential and commercial brokers, independent brokerages, teams, administrative support, and she assists agents throughout the country to scale their business to the next level. So we are so excited to have you. Welcome, Bernadette.
Thank you. Thank you. Stephanie, I didn't know you were in the East Coast as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and Lisamarie has talked and bragged about you. So I was very excited for this week because, we hadn't met. We've got similar backgrounds, but I always love it when, going into the coaching. I've not done that. I've coached a lot of agents, not with the official coaching title, but I guess kind of to start it off today, for those that are watching that maybe, they're brand new to commercial and they're not sure, what's the one advice? Where do they start? I mean, what's that number one coaching that you give to them on how to begin?
That's a good question. And honestly, I think whether you're in commercial or you're in residential, the first thing to really focus on is who you know. Who do you know in the business? And then start to put it together in a database, but then also taking it one step further and putting it into a CRM. So database is really just the collection of data, and the CRM is the client relationship manager side. It's the one that allows you to automate and to stay in relationship with everybody. And so my big push for any new agent is focus on the database and the CRM first, and then into lead generation soon after, really soon after.
That's a good point that you talk about the difference between a database and a CRM. And one of the things that I've learned is to put a moat around your database. And one of the ways you can do that is by using a CRM. So can you talk to our audience today about that, about protecting your context? Because we know that the average person knows between 7 and 10 real estate professionals. Now there's less commercial real estate agents out there, but still the same applies regardless.
And so I function under the concept of build a moat around your database too. And what that means is anyone that you know, anybody that can say they know you, like you, and trust you, that when they think real estate, they think you. And the way you make that happen is you insulate that person and you constantly touch them. Outside of the database, outside of the moat, you're trying to bring them in so that you can stay in constant communication. And what a CRM is bringing in technology with what we need in the relationship space, which is to send out monthly newsletters, just reminding them that you are in real estate. I started many years back, and I did the reverse. I did lead gen first because I love lead gen. It's just how I'm built. So I love lead gen, did lead gen first. And what I found is it made me a cherry picker. And what that means is if I came into an environment and there was maybe 300, 400 possible transactions that could take place, unless they were really willing, unless they were ready to buy or sell in that moment while I met them, then I kind of forgot about them because there wasn't an automated process to stay in relationship. So if when I say hundreds, I'm talking about doing expos where it could be hundreds to thousands of possible leads, expos and shows, trade shows. So I would go out and do that. And there was a trade show on one of my first opportunities where we had 4,000 names. And out of the 4,000 names, I was only able at that moment to convert 8. So of the 8, that was great. And I think if you were to look at a track record and say, gosh, I'll take 8 transactions any day. Yeah, but what about the other 3,992 that I missed? And when I finally put 2 and 2 together, that I needed something, the solution is what is on all of our doorsteps. We all have it. We all have a CRM. You guys have a CRM with EXP. You can purchase CRMs if what you're trying to do is a little bit bigger than what the CRM is within EXP. Which is the CRM you guys use on the commercial side?
We use
Build Out
Agent Hub
and
Build
Agent
Out
Hub. Yeah.
and Agent Hub. Yeah, we have 2.
Which Build Out and which one?
Agent Hub.
Agent Hub. And
Yeah.
so, a lot of the times when we come into real estate, we just want the next transaction. We're just looking to break even with all of the thousands of dollars that we spent just to have our license. And what we don't want to do is get back into the classroom and learn how to use technology. In fact, for the older generation, we kind of want to skate around it. And so another piece of advice is embrace it. Learn about Agent Hub, learn about Build Out. When I ran KW Raleigh for the commercial side, that was new to me. I loved Build Out too, and its possibilities. And I think I read, Stephanie, that y'all are having a campfire.
Yes, a fireside chat with Chris Crisco tomorrow. Yes.
Okay, so I love that. I know I was a Build Out's pain in the butt for a little bit because there's some functions that Build Out has if you had a custom website that they can give you a plugin to access probably the Nevada listings to put it onto your website or whatever the state is or whatever your city is. So Build Out can create that plugin to help agents really put their customization to their own website, but still have access to listings. So learn Build Out and all of its functionalities and Agent Hub, because that's the secret to really staying in relationship with all of your people. It all lies there. And so when you have the data, an example of what automation would look like would be monthly newsletters, something that's already preset. It might be just like a little billboard flashing saying, think of Bernadette Hurley if you're thinking about buying or selling commercial real estate. Or it could even just be something that you auto-populate any listings that you have, whether it's leases or buildings for sale or any type of commercial space, that it goes out automatically to your people. And so those are the things that technology can embrace.
I'm so glad you hit on that, Bernadette, because, I got into this industry in 1999 and, technology was still, trying to make its way, especially in real estate. Real estate's always been one of the ones that have been a little bit further behind. Well, I studied because back then in commercial, there really wasn't a good system. They came much later. And so the first one I had was Top Producer, which was so residential driven, but I had it because you're right. I mean, I didn't have any sphere. I was a college graduate and most of my friends had $0. So, they couldn't be my sphere, but I went to my parents and said, look, you've been in this city for a long time. You've got a sphere. I want to reach out to them. I want to start making them my sphere. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I did it. But what happened was, and people used to make fun of me all the time, and we'll touch on used to in a second, But no matter where I went, they go, oh my God, Stephanie Gilezan, there's not a week that goes by we don't hear from you. And it wasn't me personally, but it was utilizing that system to stay in front of them, because if we're out of sight, we are out of mind. And every agent that I've ever met, when they said, oh my God, I can't believe I lost that listing to whoever. And I go, well, how often did you reach out to that owner? Well, I mean, I sold it to him 2 years ago. Well, 24 months later, you're nobody to them unless you stay in constant contact. Right. And when we were doing research about building the tools and what technologies we needed to tap into, we had a third-party company do market research and interviewed over 1,500 commercial practitioners across the US. And the main thing that I wanted to know was all about technology. 42% of the 1,500 interviewed didn't know what a CRM was. Mm-hmm. They didn't even know what it was. And I'm like, oh my goodness, no wonder some look at commercial real estate industry and think it's the dinosaur, because people haven't encompassed that. You know, they just haven't. And, you know, as we attract these that have been in the industry 30, 40, 50 years, that's what we're having to reteach, which is fine, is why you have a CRM and why you have technology. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's 100% how I built my business.
Yeah,
staying in constant contact. Yeah,
I think we've desensitized brokers all across the country with the word database.
Yeah.
You know, I think people hear database and they think of an
Excel spreadsheet. Yes. They think of spreadsheets. And I'm like, you have what? A spreadsheet?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So that in essence is truly a database. Yeah. But the winners in real estate, no matter if it's commercial or residential, they're using a CRM. They're using a CRM. And for agents who are not, to build a moat around the database, what does that look like with a spreadsheet? You know, I think that
totally unmanageable.
It's completely unmanageable.
Well, first of all, you can't make a plan, because you need a plan, a marketing plan or a touch plan for your clients. And then you need to have something that's duplicatable. So you can take your content and reuse it and repurpose it with the idea of continually having that connection with your CRM. And I know that the National Association of Realtors puts out statistics every year, and that does include some commercial. There are commercial realtors out there, and most agents don't even reconnect with their clients once they've sold them a property. So Bernadette, can you talk about this balance for agents between, you know, chasing the deal, which is, and cherry picking, like what you did when you first got started, and then balancing that with the nurture and creating that relationship with their current and potential clients?
So I think everybody has to make a decision of what nurture means to them. Okay, so in a CRM or in a database, there's two different types. There's the people who know you, like you, and trust you. That's truly what we would call our SOI, our sphere of influence. And then there's another set, and those are called your leads, right? And so a lead is somebody who has said that they are thinking about buying or selling at one point. And truth be told, everybody's thinking about buying or selling at one point. It might be immediately in the next 1 to 3 years. It might be further out in the next 5 to 7. And so at the end of the day, there are many people who operate CRMs with different touch relationships, with different touches. So our sphere of influence, for instance, might only have 20, 24 touches where you're touching them 2 times per month. You might have 3 touches per month where you're touching them 36 times. And the 36 times, I mean, if you think of how many friends do we know that stay in relationship with us and touch us 3 times per month, there's not very many. So this touch doesn't have to be right in their face. It could just be, it could be a text message. It could be a holiday greeting. It could be a birthday greeting. It could be a newsletter that just reminds them that we're in real estate. And it can be a phone call. A lot of people, when they are not sure how to make phone calls, the best way to do that would be to have a client event. So I promote client events for all of my clients in coaching, because it gives you a reason to make that phone call. And so if you have it on your schedule to make 2 phone calls per year to your entire sphere of influence, what would you say? It's either going to be, just wanted to call you on your birthday, wish you a happy birthday, or it's been a year since you bought your first commercial investment. I wanted to just say happy birthday to your building, so whatever the case might be for the sphere of influence. When it comes to leads, somebody who has identified themselves as looking to buy or sell in the near future, they need to be touched a lot more, because it's game on. It's a contest between you and their research, because if you haven't nailed it with an agency agreement, chances are they're out looking at other properties. They're driving around a boulevard, grabbing some commercial signs and jotting the numbers down and making that phone call and having them show the property. So building a moat around the leads, what does that look like? It might just be sending them a whole bunch of listings. It might be sending an automated text that says, I have some availability next weekend. What's your schedule to go look at some properties? Or just looping back around with you. Are you still thinking about purchasing the commercial space that we had initially discussed? So whatever the case might be, what does that frequency look like? For a buyer, I would probably suggest 4 touches a month, 4 touches a month weekly. Maybe even if we're scaling down to they're ready to buy in the next 90 days, maybe they're hearing from you twice a week. So you build that out on how many touches you want to determine how many pre-designed emails, text messages, and how many phone calls need to go out, so that you can design that plan to reach just your leads. So to answer your question, Lisamarie, the nurture depends on who they are and what you've set up. But regardless, it requires planning. It requires planning, and it requires a vision of how you plan on going hand-to-hand combat with that data.
And so part of that is having this balance between desensitizing leads and our sphere of influence, and also staying engaged. So how do you coach agents to find that balance? Because like you and I have talked about that, because I'm the queen of reach out, and sometimes we can reach out too much, or maybe our message isn't personalized enough based on our database, because we can tag people for different types of relationships within our database.
So I would probably say that within anybody's sphere of influence, you've got so many different personality profiles, right, that you have to contend with. You've got your driven people that probably only need, they don't need the warm and fuzzy. They probably just need a text message every now and then to just say, hi, just thinking about you. Don't forget I'm in real estate. Or you might have somebody who is more of the nurturing type that would really love a phone call. So you can really dissect the data, the CRM as deep as you want it to get. But in a nutshell, most people are about relationships, and the industry itself is a relationship-based industry. So the more you can stay genuine to your most authentic self, the better. I will say that the easy button, I mean, the CRM has created, well, with the adoption of the CRM across all industries, I think all of us can look in our mailbox and know that we are spammed every day, all day long, by hundreds and hundreds of people. And so is that the relationship that you want? If the answer is no, then you've got to up your game on either the text messaging and the phone calls. And so what's enough? Well, I would consult with my clients and tell them, I need you to look at your list, and I need you to identify and maybe even create separate tags where the tags are 4 times per year, 3 times per year, 2 times per year, once a year. And those are your phone calls. If you think that somebody needs to only hear from you 1 time per year because maybe the relationship seemed ultra professional and extremely relationship distant, I would put them in the once a year. If this person was referring you business and you had that connection, and you know when you have the connection, I would probably put them in the 4 times per year. If they're a 4 time per year person, I would probably lean more into being able to see them and be able to talk to them. The 1 time a year, I would probably either text them or call them. But ultimately, when it boils down to why are you calling, we could easily have commission breath, and then that makes your touches a little bit too much if we have commission breath. But if we're true to our authentic self and the authenticity of the relationship, then there should be no problem, depending on how you set them up.
Mhm.
But ultimately, there's not one solution for everybody unless you wanted to push the easy button. If you wanted to really have a really deep connection with your database, which I coach so many people where 100% of their business comes from their sphere of influence. They've managed the database really well. They've allowed the CRM to work in their favor, and they're not afraid to make the phone calls. Or they create an environment such as a client event where it allows them to call and bring them together for the face-to-face all at once, so that you're not having to have all of these individual relationships.
That's awesome. So Bernadette, let me ask you this. For those that are, everybody, like we said, they have access to a sphere, but maybe, maybe they were young getting in and they don't want to reach out to the parents or the friends or what have you. What do you, because back when I got started and I was drumming up new business, from 8 a.m. until 10 a.m., I had the same routine Monday through Friday, and I made cold calls. Speak to that in today's time. What are you coaching, and how are you coaching people to drum up that new business?
Good question. When you boil down to the different personality types, each one has a lead generation strategy meant for them. And I don't coach to put a round peg in a square hole. If you don't have the skill or the desire to make cold calls, I wouldn't say that's your jam. For me, I love talking on the phone, but I was looking for something more impactful. So I ended up with the expos. And I love the expos because it's face-to-face. I'm a better face-to-face person than I am over the phone. So, with the emergence of all the different types of platforms like YouTube didn't exist when we first started real estate.
No.
so
Neither did Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah.
Now you can do TikTok. Yeah,
we had the phone book.
Do you remember Cole's crisscross directory? Yeah, so we had Cole's crisscross directory where everybody's name was on a huge master telephone book in different series. So yeah, it really depends on what you're doing and what your personality is telling you. There are some people, if you're good face-to-face, you would be good door knocking. You would be good at open houses. And in this case, it's in the commercial space, you wouldn't necessarily door knock, but you could go do site visits if needed. You could go network at events such as the Chamber of Commerce, where you go to all the ribbon cuttings to find out if they're planning on opening up another location that you might be able to help them with. There's networking at a lot of professional events. Anything business related, business people are the ones that need the space, the commercial space. You should be looking in there. If you are needing inbound calls, so inbound and outbound are 2 different things. I'm a far better inbound salesperson than outbound. I didn't really have the jam for cold calling. That just wasn't my thing. And I will say that cold calling is kind of pushed down residential's throats for from the beginning. It still is that's the best way to do it. It's the best way for people with that personality type who want to do that. If you don't want to do it that way, then what will work for you? But regardless, you need a lead generation strategy, because without one, if you don't really put pen to paper to figure out how you're going to generate leads, you might as well find another job too while you're trying to balance real estate, because our whole livelihood is based around lead gen. It's not about selling properties. It's about who you're going to service.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, and that's the thing, I was never, I guess in the very beginning, I was like, oh my gosh, I got a cold call. I mean, geez, I've never done anything like it, but it almost became one of those things that I loved it, because when I could land, I could do 200 calls in that 2-hour period. And if I got 3 listings out of it, that was a success. And so every phone call would amount to a trophy for me. It was a game for me. And that's how I motivated myself to do it. And I'd walk into the office and I'd tell everybody in the office, all right, I'm good. Nobody, everybody leave me alone. I'm going to get 10 today. And I didn't stop until I got 10, because I was always going to come out with that bragging right, So to me, it was almost back then, there was a little bit of, I guess they weren't cold because I was calling them for a reason. I always would go after the distressed. I just totally would go after the distress, because the distress, whether they admitted it or not, they needed a solution, and I wanted to be that solution.
Yep.
And so maybe that was easier, for me to do that. But I mean, still to this day, if I were to go back into doing, I have a team now that does all that. I don't have to do that, but if I went back into it, I would just pick up the phone and get right back into that rhythm, because it was a winner for me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's the easiest way that you could actually move from city to city.
Yeah.
And still not miss a beat, is cold calling.
Absolutely.
A lot of success in that.
There's something to be said about, because I, teach new and experienced commercial real estate agents across the US through our Accelerate program at eXp Commercial. And I talk to them about getting this rhythm with whatever it is you're going to do. You do that time blocking, especially in the morning, because so we don't get caught up in the whirlwind of our day, which is 80% of our day, or maybe even more. And so I talked to them about momentum, because people have this call hesitancy, and they also have call bias, where they're like, well, I only want to call these people because I know them. And I love what Stephanie said about, I have some value to bring to the conversation. And so why wouldn't I want to talk to these people? Right. And I find for me, I get juiced up when I start making phone calls. I get energized. That's part of my personality. And so even this morning in Accelerate, we were role playing on phone calls, and a lot of the investors that we deal with in commercial real estate, they're not the soft and fuzzy people. And we're doing these cold calls this morning, and they're like, oh yeah, could I, get a time where we could get together and stuff. And these people don't want to get together. They just want you to bring some value to the conversation right away. And so what's your recommendation, Bernadette, for commercial real estate agents in today's market, bringing value to their customers that, and some of these customers you may never see, even if you're completing a transaction with them, you may never meet them in person, depending on the type of asset that you're selling.
Yeah, I think that everybody that you are in business with, or anybody that you've sold property to, you almost need a dossier on them. And you shouldn't leave the transaction without knowing the type of investor that they are. Do you plan on buying a lot of investment properties, or is this just one and done? Do you have investment properties that you're thinking about liquidating? Whether it's here or any other state, I can help you. It's just about thinking a couple of steps ahead and knowing what everybody's plan is, and then organizing that data with tags within the CRM to allow you to stay in front of it. So if you were going to tag somebody as an active investor, somebody who's constantly ready to invest in the next property, they're just waiting for people to bring them the deal. I know a lot of people that are like that. Just bring me the deal, I'll look at it. I think everybody on this call probably knows people, but who are they? Are they tagged? When you find the deal, do you have to sit there and look at your spreadsheet and figure out Now, who could I send this to? Or are you just waiting to put it on the market and wait for somebody to bring in the buyer? No, we need to be thinking of how we can either pull more buyers from this one listing that you have, or even pull more sellers. Like, this is an opportunity to say, if you have multiple offers, if you've got a certain type of interest in this property, I would pull out the build out form. Doesn't build out give you telephone numbers of owners of buildings?
Build out doesn't, but our system, we have EXP's enriched data. And so we get that. And you can also get it through Reonomy. But yeah, it's vetted phone numbers. And I mean, I go to town with that, but
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I would get those numbers. That's the commercial version of cold calling. To just call all of them and say, we put a building up for sale and it's similar to yours, or it's in your area, and it sold relatively quick. And I made a commitment to call all the building owners in the area to find out who's thinking about selling, because I have a list of buyers who are looking in your general area. Are you thinking about selling or liquidating any of your assets anytime soon?
100%.
Let
Yeah.
them tell you.
You know, and that's one of the things about, you know, why technology is so important and access to great data is so important. But anytime you list a property for sale, for lease, whatever, I think it is our job. It should be part of the job. I make it my team's job to look at all the surrounding properties. I don't care if they're like kind or not. Everything that is touching, it's across the street, it's this, it's that. And to announce to them, hey, Joe, I see you're across the street from 123 Main Street. I just wanted to reach out, introduce myself. My name is Stephanie Gilezan. I've just listed this property for sale. I wanted you to be aware because I think it's important that I ask you, what type of neighbor in this building are you looking for? Do you know someone who wants to be on this block? Do you know anybody? And you ask their opinion. Guess what? You have elevated them up to here, and they're like, man, I'm part of this decision. They're really not,
Right.
but they feel like they're part of a decision.
Right.
And guess what? You have grown a fan. They're going to start seeking who they want that neighbor to be. So now they're going to expose your listing to others, right?
Right.
But aside from that, they're going to appreciate you and think you're such a badass that they're going to say, hey, why don't you come look at my building? Maybe it's time that I see how much equity I have. That has worked for me so often to where we'll go and get one, I don't care if it's a freestanding building or a strip center or what, we get one and end up with multiples.
Yeah.
Not because the neighbor saw the sign on the building, but because we picked up the phone and built a relationship.
Yeah.
And so I call that, it's a cold call, but I call it a warm lead. I call it warm because you're already, it comes warm the moment you ask them for their opinion, whether you are going to use it or not. They feel appreciative.
Yeah. And in the world of residential, they call that circle prospecting.
Yeah.
Circle prospecting is basically where a listing pops up, maybe not even your own, and you're just calling everybody around it who could visibly see that there's some activity going on and having a conversation about that with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and another great thing about, you know, with all the great technology out there, when you're looking, you know, when you, let's say you list a hotel, and you can look up and see who else owns those like brands, right? Throughout the entire country.
Right.
We have access to that information if you're subscribing to the right tools and the right data. And that's another one that you instantly can have an entire list of owners, their cell phone numbers, their email addresses. But like you said, emails get lost. So I'd rather pick up the phone and let them know firsthand what it is that we've listed, because they might be interested. If they own one somewhere else or 6 somewhere else, they're more than likely going to be interested in that. And if they're not interested because they're getting out of the business or they're looking for their exit plan, then there's the potential for 6 more of those like kind listings.
Right. Right.
And that's a way that in commercial real estate that you could begin to own a territory. And that's always very powerful. The same in residential, when someone like owns the neighborhood where you see their signs everywhere, they've penetrated the veil of that potential customer base. And you can do the same thing in commercial real estate One of the things I love about the technology that Stephanie was alluding to at EXP Commercial is when we pull up ownership of one property, we can see the other assets that that property owner owns across the United States.
Oh,
So we can
wow.
have a much higher level conversation because the three of us here know when you're talking to a property owner, they're not just going to volunteer the fact that they own 7 or 57 other assets.
And I hate to, I'm sorry to cut you off, Lisamarie, but when I get a thought, I always want to share it because this is when we can see everything that somebody has and we're telling them, hey, Joe Smith, I see that you own 123 Main Street, but I see you also own 27 other properties in these select areas and name it off. The first words out of their mouth, it never fails. This is my favorite. This is my favorite. How the hell do you know this?
Yeah.
It's my job
my
to
job
know
to
this.
know. That's right.
It's my job to know this. It is my job to understand what's going on, which made you at the top of my list as to why I'm making this call, because I don't want to deal with an investor who has no money, but obviously with your impressive portfolio, you can afford exactly what I'm going to present to you. Are you interested in hearing more? I mean, they love that stuff. It's like, I've had people say, are you a PI? No, as this is all public record. I mean, but it's funny to go ahead and be honest and tell them, have I offended people? Sure. Do I still win? Yes.
Yeah, I love that you and I said the same thing at the same time, which is it's my job to know these things.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and you can easily present yourself as an expert. And this is what's going to separate the super successful, powerful agents from the ones that are have commission breath. I love when you said that earlier, Bernadette. And newer agents, especially because they're feeling hungry or desperate, or they become so focused on, the micro detail that they don't see the big picture. And our potential clients, even if we know them well, they're not going to necessarily give us the full picture of what their plan is, if they're going to be buying or selling. And the great thing about EXP is that we can help them do that anywhere, pretty much anywhere that you can think of. We can help them buy or sell their real estate.
So going back to lead gen strategies, knowing that you have that data, I'd love to see everybody that's in a participant here, write in the chat, what are you going to do with that data?
Yeah.
Now that you know the data exists, what do you have, Stephanie? You've got names, telephone numbers, emails, and the list of properties?
Absolutely. Yeah. And all their debts, we have access to all their debts. So any loans they have outstanding out there, we've got their, their bad news as well, if they've missed anything or maybe they're delinquent. But we also too have their improvements. So any work that's been done on any of those properties that they had to pull a permit, whether it's HVAC or, just a remodel or whatever the case might be, we have access to that information as well too, which information's power. And so what's great is when you're speaking to them, like you said, that you need to have a dossier on who you're speaking to.
Mm-hmm.
So how smart is it when you can actually tell the owner of the building, oh, it's so wonderful that you put in, this new HVAC in 2019. Now your ESG score is this versus what, I mean, all of that's powerful, but go right ahead.
and they're like, say what? Like, how did you know? The other cool thing is we can pierce the corporate veil too. So we can look behind the corporation or the LLC and see who the owners are. And if there's people out there listening to this that don't have access to this kind of data, then talk to Stephanie or I, because we can help you have access to that where a lot of organizations don't. So please, Bernadette, go ahead.
So going back to what you used to do, Stephanie, when you first started, the easiest low-hanging fruit for you to cold call were the distressed properties.
Yeah. So, well, I'm going to tell you, it was not only distress that had LPs filed on them, les pendants, that's the Latin for foreclosure, but also I would read the code enforcements. So, in my metro area, if you had, overgrown grass or a dead tree limb or whatever, they cited you. So I would read the citations, which I considered very low hanging fruit, because if they were cited, they may not have been fined, but they were cited. I would always respond and say, hey, Judith Rosenberg, and this is a great story. Hey, Judith Rosenberg, I see you own 411 properties, and gosh, you've got over 1,200 citations this month. By any chance, or are you having some financial issues? I am the wealthiest. From that phone call to today, I have sold over 400 properties for her, and she's one of my best friends. And I landed her by insulting her, but it was true. It was true. She looked like she was a big time slumlord loser of all these commercial properties scattered throughout Louisville.
Yeah,
So
that's
go ahead.
that's actually a good identifier, is the citations.
Yeah.
Because you're right. They're going to spend less money on upkeep and maintenance if their pockets are hurting. But going back to what EXP, that data set that you were talking about, it identifies distressed properties too on the commercial space, whether it's tax liens or late pays.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in the chat, what is that information? What does that do for you? Can you call those people, and what would you say? What would you say? I'm just really.
I've got that, and I mean, I did that for years, but I'll let them answer because it's so interesting.
Yeah, give them a couple of minutes to fill out what they would say, because there's some great opportunity there.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have business in the next 3 months, you got to be doing that at least, because similar to Stephanie's new BFF, they need somebody, a resource to give them options.
Yeah.
To just say, listen, you could even come in acting like you don't know. I'm just calling all of the building owners in your area to find out if you're thinking about selling or refinancing, and getting into relationship there.
Yeah.
So what would you say, Stephanie? The chat box is kind of filling up. Give me your script.
So my script was always the same, and I never strayed away from it. I would say, hey, Michael, this is Stephanie Gilezan. I'm calling in regards to the property at 123 Main Street. I see that you're in a financial hardship, and I wanted to reach out because I can offer you assistance that's not going to cost you any money. You're not going to lose the property, and you're not going to get foreclosure on your credit. What would you like to do? And sometimes they would hang up on me, but for the most part, it would continue, and they would ask questions. Well, how is that going to take place? How is it going to do that? A lot of these became short sales. I became a short sale queen. In some years, we would get up to 500 closings a year. I had all these paralegals negotiating debt, and that's a lot about what we did. But even aside from that, so many of them, they were delinquent, but they had equity. So we were able to actually save them. What I learned was that so many of these people that got themselves in that situation ignored the problem. They really did. They ignored the problem. They get this LP served to them by the sheriff. Before it's served by the sheriff, I'm seeing it, because I had a staff that watched this every single day, and sometimes I'd walk in and we'd print them out. They'd already have the phone numbers on it, because that's what I would do. That's what I would call. And so many of them were in denial, like it was going to automatically, assist, or they had tenants that weren't paying rents, which is why they couldn't. And I go, I get that. So here's what we can do. We can get the property leased up. We can get it sold. We can work with your bank to buy some time, which all banks would. All banks would if you communicated with them. Where banks, would go full force is when the owner would ignore the problem, right? And not respond to the bank. And so majority of the time, what I figured out, and not every state is this way, it depends on if you're in an attorney-driven state or not. So in Kentucky, we're an attorney-driven state. And so whenever there was debt, bad debt, and you were able to clean that up for the bank, meaning they took a shorter payoff, and ended it that way, or we got the property back up to a level to where that mortgage payment could be paid, in an attorney-driven state, we could charge the bank a service fee.
Oh, wow.
And so I did. And so in many of those cases, the seller paid me nothing, but the bank paid me a lot. And that's how we would do it. And so in that same script, I could even say, this will probably be free of charge to you. That's my goal. I can't guarantee it, but this isn't going to cost you anything. Because you got to remember, when they are in a distressed situation, there's another big, broader range of people going after them, and that's bankruptcy attorneys trying to convince them to file bankruptcy, which if all they have is that distressed property, you should never file bankruptcy at all. There's no reason for it. And so I became kind of known for that. And eventually the bankruptcy attorneys started referring me all this business.
Love it.
And so that's how we built it. And then one day the market became so phenomenal, like the last few years, it's been okay. We haven't had a whole lot of that, but we took that business plan and built an entire empire in real estate to where that's not our bulk of business anymore, but we never know when the day is going to change. And we start seeing a lot of distressed property. And all I'll do is call those people on my speed dial and go, hey, it's time to get back to business. I'll set up the same exact team and we'll do it again to the masses. But this time we will be able to do it in multiple states because I've got this whole team of business partners at eXp Commercial where we have boots on the ground everywhere and we will all share in the wealth to do that. So not that I wish that, but if it happens, we're fully prepared.
Yeah.
So Bernadette, what would you say has been your biggest lesson that you've learned in 2021, our COVID year?
Oh gosh. I'm going to say that the market shifts exist and they will exist again in y'all's timeline in real estate. And in 2021, the market shifted. And when a market shifts, it basically means it's the redistribution of market share. So we saw some new players come on the real estate front that came out of nowhere, but they came in hot. And we've seen some players who had been traditional top producers lose market share.
Yeah.
And I think the big takeaway that I would say that many of my clients and the things that our team experiences is that in the presence of a shift, you have to act accordingly. You have to build a moat around your database, and you have to dive deeper into relationships. Because in a shifted market, that's when people start thinking about what they're going to do. Whether in this case, it became a seller's market. In the last shift, it was a buyer's market, right? And so watching that pendulum swing from what I had experienced in 2008 to what we're experiencing now, I know so many people who have sold their home at top dollar because that was the script of the moment. Sell your home, sell your home, sell your home. And they're going into the rental pool.
Yeah.
Rentals are coming down low. There's the inventory on rentals is crazy. So now that brings in a new conversation of who are the next generation of real estate investors that can then help the rental pool for all of these people who sold high. So there's a lot of conversations that can take place with a shifted market. The lesson learned is be engaged and be ready to pivot fast.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what someone did as a top producing agent in a certain market may not work as a market shifts, and their success can be determined by their ability to read the market, the emerging market, and be able to pivot quickly and implement their new strategy.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. The real estate industry can throw in a lot of different scripts to help us. And one of the scripts that was surprising that we didn't need, I don't think we're gonna need, is the foreclosure script. because there was the anticipation that with all the job losses, we were going to have a higher number of foreclosures. That didn't take place. A lot of people were ready for that, but we also needed to be ready for some other scenarios as well. So yeah, it's been an interesting market for sure.
And what's your best piece of advice that you can offer to people who want to grow and scale their business in 2022?
Start with the end in mind. You can start building your 5-year plan now. So if you come in here, like when I came into the industry, I could have easily taken on the persona that I just need to know where's my next sale coming from. But I came in with the end in mind saying, I want to build a real estate team. So everything that I did was in the name of lead gen to figure out if I wanted to bring in 5 salespeople for my team, how many leads do I need to create to be able to have my world be big enough for their world with the leads that I can provide? So in terms of advice, where do you want to be? Where do you want to be in 3 years? Where do you want to be in 2 years? And then reverse engineer that path and that journey to have that life for you. And it also means that you got to put away some of the fear, some of the call reluctance, some of the things that hold you back. We all have them. We all have them. And in the world of coaching, I call that our saboteur. And we all have a saboteur. I would invite you all to give your saboteur a name, and when you feel that saboteur, tell it to go away and just keep pushing and keep your focus on your 2-year, your 3-year, your 5-year goal. If you're on the call and you're thinking about you've been in the business for a while, I would invite you to start thinking and preparing your business for a handoff. There's many people who at the end of their journey, they don't know what to do with their business, or if opportunity presents itself, I don't know what to do with the business. And so I would probably come up with a plan, a succession plan, and start building and creating your business that will allow a succession plan to be successful, whether it's 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now. If you guys are already up and going with your commercial business, or if there's some residential agents that are on here, start with that end in mind. The only way that you can have a really solid succession plan where the value of what you're selling, your business, is at its all-time high, it would mean that your database and your CRM and all of the touches and all of the nurture plans are intact. When I moved over to Raleigh from Texas, it's funny because I was approached by many different agents that said, well, I'm 75, I'm thinking about, retiring at the beach. I don't know what to do with the business. Do you want to buy it? And I said, well, how much do you want to sell it to me for? And they're thinking like 300, 400, 500,000. And I'm thinking, what do you got? Like, tell me what you got. We can talk about that. And they're like, well, I don't know how I get my business. The phone just rings. I've been successful. I make $20 million. I sell $20 million, $30 million in sales a year. I don't know how. Like, well, will you sell me your phone number? Like, your phone number is really the only thing of value that I have, which is the inbound calls, because you haven't been in relationship with them throughout the course of your time in real estate. So, I would probably say, use that as an example, as a case study of how to not be that person. Be the person that has a book of business that's ready to make that transfer.
Most agents don't have an exit strategy. I know people that are in their 80s that are still doing real estate. And so I love the idea of having that exit plan. Stephanie had an exit plan from her team and moved on to do things that she wants to do. And I'm working on the same strategy. Mm-hmm. And just transitioning from that excellent advice, Bernadette, what is your secret sauce, and how do you set yourself apart from your competition as a high-level real estate coach?
Honestly, I am always about accountability, and I'm always about focusing on the behavioral fit to your natural and most authentic self. And I think that's what makes me different. when it comes to the world of coaching, there's hundreds of us that are out there. And ultimately, you would want to partner with somebody who is in alignment with what you want and what your vision is versus their vision. And I think that that's really the secret sauce that I have. Every single relationship that I'm in the coaching capacity, I love that process. I'm in the business with them, and I'm right there to through all the ups and the downs. And sometimes I'm just the person that needs to listen and keep my mouth shut so that they could just have somebody to go to and just dump it all out.
So what you're saying is you're also the therapist.
Yeah.
Everyone in real estate needs a therapist.
We all are, exactly. Regardless. There's drama everywhere. No, that's awesome. Well, Bernadette, I love this today. I mean, we need to do more of these if you're ever up to it. I love the conversation. You took me, I guess, as my therapist today, you took me back through the past and made me think. And no, I love this. So I appreciate it. And I hope our audience absolutely found value in it. I'm sure they did. Absolutely. So Lisamarie, great find with Bernadette for sure.
Oh yeah. Bernadette's wonderful. And, even coaches, Stephanie, you're a coach. I'm a coach. We may not have that as our number one title in our job descriptions, but we're coaching all the time. And one of the messages that I would like to convey is that even coaches need coaches, because we don't know what we don't know. Yeah. And a lot of times we don't see our blind spots. And sometimes we need to hire or expand our team and our organization in order to bridge the gap for some of those qualities that we personally don't have, or things that aren't on our radar. What do you think about it, Bernadette?
I would agree. I even have a coach.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're not coached yet, you should be. Everybody needs to find a coach, even if it's one of these two ladies. I've been coached my entire life, my entire real estate life, which is more than half of it. I don't know if I would have found success without a coach. So seeking the advice of people who have walked that path is definitely something you should do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
I enjoyed it. Thank you, ladies. I really enjoyed it.
Hey, the next time we all get together needs to be having a drink at the bar. I just have a feeling that would be amazing. Okay.
Well, y'all are in Nevada, so you can probably know that I'll probably be around sometime in that.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to see each other because I'm at all those in-person commercial events. So we got to connect, Bernadette. I'll be at SAOR and ICSE and all of them. So
awesome.
Let's make sure that we connect. Okay.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone. This was great.
Thank you. And then join us again. We'll be back on the second Wednesday of February. We have an awesome guest coming, John Tavares. He is a executive for Villa Title, which is a national commercial real estate title and escrow company. So we'll have some great conversations there. And thank you, Stephanie, for being my partner. And Bernadette, thanks so much again for joining us today. It was a fabulous conversation.
Great conversation. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you. Bye-bye.